Hello dear students. So in this lecture we are going to discuss the topic which is diffraction of light, and we are going to discuss the topic which is Fraunhofer diffraction due to single slit. So in this lecture we are going to discuss Fraunhofer diffraction due to single slit, for which we are going to derive the equation for amplitude of the diffracted ray, and from that condition, from that equation of amplitude of the diffracted rays, we are going to look at the condition of principal maxima, minima and secondary maxima, and then we will see the resultant intensity pattern. So let us start with the topic which is Fraunhofer diffraction due to single slit. So let us consider that there is a single slit. So let us say that this is a single slit of width A, say small a, and let us illuminate this single slit of width small a by a monochromatic light whose wavelength is, say, suppose lambda. Then according to Huygens wave theory of light, each and every point of this single slit, it will act as a source of secondary wave, and therefore it will send secondary waves in all possible directions. So there are some secondary waves which travel normal to the slit, and there are some secondary waves which are traveling in this direction theta with respect to the direction of normal, and all such secondary waves, they are brought to focus on the screen with the help of this biconvex lens L. So the secondary rays traveling normal to the slit, they are brought to focus at point P0 on the screen, while the secondary rays which are traveling in this direction theta with respect to the direction of normal, they are brought to focus at point P on the screen. Now since the secondary rays which travel normal to the slit, they travel equivalent paths in order to reach at point P0 on the screen, and hence intensity produced at point P0 is always a maxima, and hence that intensity is called as principal maxima or central maxima. We will see the condition for that also later. While look at these rays, in simple words, here since the path traveled by all the rays is same, and therefore the rays which meet at point P0 by traveling equivalent paths, they will always produce the principal maxima at this point P0. But since the rays which are diffracted in the direction theta with respect to the direction of normal, they travel different paths in order to reach at point P on the screen. How they travel different paths? Because if I draw a perpendicular from this ray 1 on the paths of these many number of rays, then here you will see that this ray 2 travels this much additional distance as compared to that of ray 1. So paths traveled by all these rays beyond this perpendicular will be same, but prior to this perpendicular, ray 2 travels this much additional path as compared to that of ray 1. Ray 3 travels this much additional path as compared to that of ray 1, and so on. And therefore since the rays which are diffracted in the direction theta with respect to the direction of normal, they travel different paths, it means that there exists a path difference between them, and hence the intensity produced at point P, it will be either a maxima or it can be a minima. When it will be a maxima, when the path difference between the two between the light waves which are originated from different parts of the same incident wave front, like 1, 2, 3, 4 and so on, then if the path difference between such light sources, if it is integral multiple of wavelength, then the intensity produced at point P will be a maxima, while if the path difference between such secondary waves, if it is odd integral multiple of half the wavelength, then they will produce here the minima, and hence the intensity produced at point P is a disturbed intensity. So we are interested in calculating what is the intensity produced at point P on the screen. So in order to calculate this disturbed intensity produced at point P, what we do is we divide this single slit of width A into large number of slits, each of width delta x. So it means that each slit is of width delta x, and you can imagine these rays like 1, 2, 3 and so on. So these are the rays which are diffracted from top and bottom edge of each single slit whose width is delta x. So we divide this single slit of width A into large number of imaginary slits, each of width delta x, and we can imagine that these are the secondary waves like 1, 2, 3, 4 and so on. We can imagine a system like ray 1 and ray 2. They are diffracted from top and bottom edge of this single slit whose width is delta x. Ray 2 and ray 3, they are diffracted from top and bottom edge of this single slit whose width is delta x, and so on. Then let us choose a single slit of width delta x from such n number of slits. Let us choose a single slit of width delta x, and let us consider that these are the rays like ray 1 and ray 2. They are diffracted from top and bottom edge of this single slit whose width is delta x. So in order to find the path difference between ray 1 and ray 2, what we do is we draw a perpendicular from ray 1 on the path of this ray 2, so that paths traveled by ray 1 and ray 2 beyond this perpendicular will be same. But prior to this perpendicular, this ray 2, it travels this much additional distance as compared to that of ray 1, and this additional distance is nothing but it is the path difference. Let us denote it by a letter, say suppose delta. So now look at the geometry of the figure over here. Here both the rays, that is ray 1 and ray 2, they are diffracted at an angle of diffraction theta with respect to the direction of normal. So this is the direction of normal, and with respect to the direction of normal they are diffracted in this direction theta. So we know that this distance is equal to delta x. This angle is theta. This total angle will be 90. So this angle will be equal to 90 minus theta. This is 90, and therefore this angle will be equal to theta. So now what is sine of theta in this triangle? If I take this as a triangle, then for this triangle sine theta will be equal to opposite side upon hypotenuse. So sine theta is equal to opposite side, which is delta, upon hypotenuse, which is delta x. And therefore we rewrite this formula in terms of delta, where this delta is the path difference. So this path difference will be equal to delta, which is equal to delta x into sine theta. Hence the corresponding phase difference between ray 1 and ray 2 is delta phi, and that delta phi will be equal to 2 pi by lambda into delta x sine theta, because we already have discussed this for many number of times, that a phase difference of pi will always corresponds to a path difference of lambda by 2, and hence for any path difference of x, the corresponding phase difference will be 2 pi by lambda multiplied by x. So 2 pi by lambda multiplied by x, this will be my phase difference if my path difference is x. If my path difference is x, my phase difference will be 2 pi by lambda into x. So here, since my path difference is delta x into sine theta, and therefore my phase difference delta phi will be equal to 2 pi by lambda into path difference, which is delta x into sine theta. So now the phase relationship between ray 1 and ray 2 is represented by a vector, and that vector is called as a phasor. So the phasor, if this is a vector which is a phasor for ray 1 and this is phasor for ray 2, then the angle between these two phasors is represented as delta phi, where this delta phi is the phase difference between ray 1 and ray 2. So this is the type of diagram which we can show as a phase relationship between the ray 1 and ray 2 with the help of a vector called as the phasor. So this diagram is called as a phasor diagram. Okay, so now what is the phase difference between ray 3, ray 2 and ray 3? Again it is delta phi. What is the phase difference between 3 and 4? Again it is delta phi. What is the phase difference between 4 and 5? Again it is delta phi, because each slit is of width delta x, and we know what is the phase difference for a slit width which is delta x. It is delta phi, and therefore if I draw these phasors together, then this is phasor for ray 1, this is phasor for ray 2, and there exists a phase difference of delta phi between 1 and 2. Then this is phasor for ray 2, this is phasor for ray 3, and there exists a phase difference of delta phi between 2 and 3. This is phasor for ray 3, this is phasor for ray 4, and there exists a phase difference of delta phi between 3 and 4, and so on. So if I keep on adding all these phasors together, then by adding all these phasors together I will get an arc of a circle, and therefore the total angle which is subtended by this arc will be nothing but it is the total phase difference of phi, because if I keep on adding all these phase differences of delta phi together, that is delta phi plus delta phi plus delta phi and so on, so delta phi plus delta phi plus delta phi and so on, that will be the total phase difference of phi, and that total phase difference phi will be equal to 2 pi by lambda into a sin theta, because my phase difference delta phi is 2 pi by lambda into delta x sin theta. So for delta phi plus delta phi plus delta phi and so on, 2 pi by lambda into sin theta will be common, and delta x plus delta x plus delta x and so on. So ultimately delta x plus delta x plus delta x will be equal to this small a, which is the width of the slit. So this phase difference phi, which is equal to 2 pi by lambda into a sin theta, this represents the total phase difference between the first and the last ray which are diffracted from the single slit. It means that this this total phase difference of phi, which is equal to 2 pi by lambda, which is equal to 2 pi by lambda into a sin theta. So this is the total phase difference which I obtained for the rays which are diffracted from the top and bottom edge of a single slit whose width is a. So this phi is the phase difference between the first and the last ray which are diffracted from top and bottom edge of a single slit whose width is a. Okay, so I again redraw this figure over here. So by addition of all these phasors together, here I will get an arc of a circle, and the total angle which is subtended by this arc is the total phase difference of phi. Now let us represent this arc AB by say EM, and let us join this chord AB, and let this chord AB is represented by E theta. Then let us draw a perpendicular bisector from this C on this E theta, so that it will divide this E theta into two equal parts, that is AD is equal to dB. At the same time it will divide this angle exactly into half, as alpha is equal to phi by 2, and here this R will be the radius of this arc which is AB. Okay, so in phasor diagram we have represented this EM by the amplitude of principal maxima, and this length of chord AB is represented as E theta, where this E theta is the amplitude of the diffracted rays. Now why we have done like this, or why we have represented like this, because you know that the length of arc is always greater than the length of this chord, and therefore in our case, since the amplitude of the principal maxima is maximum on its scale, while the amplitude of the secondary maxima is less, obviously it is less than the amplitude of the principal maxima, and therefore we have represented this length of chord AB as E theta, where this E theta stands for the amplitude of the diffracted rays, while this EM has maximum length, and therefore this EM will represent the amplitude of the principal maxima. So now this is our phasor diagram. Now from this phasor diagram, now if you look at this triangle which is say ACD, then in this triangle ACD, sine of alpha will be equal to AD upon AC, that is opposite side upon hypotenuse. So it is sine alpha is equal to AD upon AC. So this will be sine of phi by 2, because alpha is equal to phi by 2, that will be equal to AD, but this AD is half of E theta, and therefore this AD is replaced as E theta by 2 divided by AC, where this AC is the radius of this arc, and therefore now I rewrite this equation in terms of E theta. So we get E theta is equal to 2 times R into sine of phi by 2. Now you know one more relation, that angle is equal to arc upon radius. So since angle is equal to arc upon radius, now our angle is phi, and arc is EM, and it is divided by radius, which is R. So we can rewrite this, rearrange this in terms of R, that is radius of arc, as R is equal to EM by phi, and now we use this value of R in this equation which is E theta is equal to 2 times r into sine of phi by 2. So by using this value of r, we get E theta is equal to 2 times this r will be equal to Em by phi into sine of phi by 2. So this E theta will be equal to Em into sine of phi by 2, and I can take this 2 in the denominator, so it will be Em divided by phi by 2. But since you know that this phi by 2 is nothing but it is alpha, phi by 2 is equal to alpha, where alpha is half of the total phase difference. Alpha is equal to phi by 2, and therefore I can write this equation for amplitude of diffracted ray as E theta is equal to Em into sine alpha upon alpha. So this is the equation for amplitude of the diffracted rays, which is important. Now since we obtain the equation in terms of amplitude of the diffracted rays, we can write the equation in terms of intensity just by taking the square of this equation. So squaring this equation, we get square of E theta as I theta, square of Em as Im, square of this sine alpha as sine square alpha upon alpha square. So we can write the equation for intensity of diffracted rays as I theta is equal to Im into sine square alpha upon alpha square. Now let us discuss the condition for principal maxima, minima and secondary maxima. So the condition for principal maxima, so we know that E theta is equal to Em into sine alpha upon alpha. So this is Em into sine alpha upon alpha. So we write this E theta is equal to Em upon alpha, and we expand this alpha, we expand this sine of alpha in terms of a sine series of alpha like this, which is alpha minus alpha cube upon 3 factorial plus alpha raised to 5 upon 5 factorial minus alpha raised to 7 by 7 factorial plus and so on. So we can now cancel out this alpha from the denominator, and hence we get E theta is equal to Em into 1 minus alpha square by 3 factorial plus alpha raised to 4 by 5 factorial plus and so on. Now since we are studying the condition for principal maxima, we are deriving the condition for principal maxima, so we want that E theta should be exactly equal to Em, because why here this Em is the amplitude of principal maxima. So when we want that here this E theta should be exactly equal to Em. Now this E theta will be exactly equal to Em only when the value of these alpha is equal to 0. And if alpha is equal to 0, if this alpha is equal to 0, we have already defined what is alpha. Alpha is phi by 2, which is pi by lambda into a sin theta. It should be equal to 0. Now in order to satisfy this equation, either this pi should be equal to 0, a should be equal to 0, or sin theta should be equal to 0. This pi cannot be 0. A is width of the single slit, it is constant, so it cannot be 0. And therefore in order to satisfy this equation, the only thing which can be equal to 0 is sin theta. So sin theta should be equal to 0. If sin theta is equal to 0, it means that theta is equal to 0. Now just look at the rays for which theta, that is angle of diffraction theta, is 0. Here these are the secondary rays which are traveling in the direction of normal, and for all such secondary rays which travel in the direction of normal, the angle of diffraction theta is 0. So for all such secondary rays for which the angle of diffraction theta is equal to 0 and which meet at point P0 on the screen, they will always produce the principal maxima, and hence the principal maxima is produced for those secondary rays for which angle of diffraction theta is equal to 0 or alpha is equal to 0. So alpha equal to 0 or theta equal to 0 is the condition for principal maxima. Then the principal maxima is produced by those secondary rays which travel normal to the slit. Okay. Now the condition for minima. We know that this E theta is equal to Em into sine alpha upon alpha. So for this E theta to be minima or E theta to be minimum, this Em cannot be 0, because this Em is the amplitude of principal maxima. It means that in order to have that E theta to be minimum, this sine alpha should tend to 0. And if sine alpha tends to 0, it means that alpha should take the value which is equal to plus minus of m pi, because sine pi is 0, sine 2 pi is 0, similarly sine of minus pi is 0, sine of minus 2 pi is 0, and so on. So in order to satisfy this equation, that is sine alpha is equal to 0, the value of alpha should be equal to plus minus of m pi. But here this m cannot take value starting from 0. Why? Because otherwise it would become the condition for principal maxima. How? Because here if I substitute m is equal to 0, then this alpha will be equal to 0, and alpha equal to 0 is the condition for principal maxima. So here m can take values starting from 1, 2, 3 and so on, but m cannot take value starting from 0. So this is the condition for minima. And what this plus minus sign indicate? This plus minus sign, it indicates that the position of minima is symmetrical with respect to the principal maxima, because the condition of minima is satisfied for the value of alpha being either plus pi or minus pi, similarly for alpha equal to plus 2 pi or alpha equal to minus 2 pi and so on. And therefore this plus minus sign, it indicates that the position of minima is symmetrical with respect to, it is symmetrical with respect to what? It is symmetrical with respect to the principal maxima. So let us substitute here value of alpha. So the alpha is pi by lambda into a sin theta. So this pi by lambda into a sin theta is equal to plus minus of m pi. So we can cancel out this pi from both sides, and hence we can write finally the condition for minima as a sin theta is equal to plus minus of m into lambda. So this is the condition for minima, which is very important. Then let us derive the condition for secondary maxima. So since the secondary maximas they lie exactly, or they are located exactly between the two consecutive minimas, and therefore we can write for the condition for maxima, secondary maxima, as alpha is equal to since alpha equal to plus or minus m pi is the condition for minima, and since the position of secondary maxima, it lies exactly between the two consecutive minimas, hence the condition for secondary maxima, it becomes alpha equal to plus minus of m plus half pi. So now we can substitute the value of alpha as pi by lambda into a sin theta, and it is equal to plus minus of m plus half pi. So again cancelling pi from both sides and rewriting this equation, we get the condition for secondary maxima as a sin theta is equal to plus minus of m plus half lambda. So this is the condition for secondary maxima in case of Fraunhofer diffraction due to single slit. And here this n can take values like 1, 2, 3 and so on. So obviously when we substitute here n is equal to 1, it means that this is the first order secondary maxima. For n is equal to 2, it or this m, here this you can refer this as m. So this m is equal to 1 stands for first order secondary maxima, m is equal to 2 stands for second order secondary maxima, m is equal to 3 stands for third order secondary maxima, and so on. Okay, so now we know what is the equation for amplitude of the diffracted rays, as I theta is equal to Im into sine alpha upon alpha whole thing square. So if I substitute here value of this alpha, as plus minus of m plus half pi, then if I substitute this value of alpha over here, then this will be the intensity of secondary maxima. So this I theta will be the intensity of secondary maxima, and therefore this I theta will be equal to Im into sine of, if I put here alpha as m plus half pi upon alpha, which is again m plus half pi whole thing square, where this m can take values as 1, 2, 3 and so on, then this I theta will be the intensity of secondary maxima. So if I write the ratio of I theta upon Im, where this Im is the it is the intensity of principal maxima, while here I theta is the intensity of secondary maximas, and therefore if I write this equation as I theta upon Im, then this ratio I theta upon Im is known as relative intensity of secondary maxima, and it is relative to what? It is relative to intensity of principal maxima. So this ratio I theta upon Im will be equal to, if I substitute here m is equal to 1, then this will be equal to sine of this is 1 plus half, that is 3 pi by 2 divided by 3 pi by 2 whole thing square. If you compute that value, it comes out to be 0.045. Then if you substitute here m is equal to 2, then this will be sine of 5 pi by 2 divided by 5 pi by 2 whole thing square. If you compute that value, then it comes out to be 0.016. And if I substitute here m is equal to 3, then it will be sine of 7 pi by 2 upon 7 pi by 2 whole thing square, and that value comes out to be 0.008. What do you observe over here is this relative intensity of secondary maxima. It keeps on decreasing. It keeps on decreasing as the order of diffraction keeps on increasing. So if this relative intensity keeps on decreasing as the order of diffraction keeps on increasing, and here therefore we can draw the resultant intensity pattern due to single slit. So for alpha is equal to 0, what is the condition for principal maxima? Alpha is equal to 0. This is the condition for principal maxima. So for principal maxima, this relative intensity I theta upon Im will be equal to 1. If I theta upon Im is equal to 1, it means that I theta is equal to Im. I theta is equal to Im. And therefore here you will have the position of principal maxima satisfying the condition which is alpha equal to 0. Then the condition for minima, we have seen that condition for minima is alpha is equal to plus minus of m pi, where this m can take value starting from 1 and so on, 1, 2, 3 like that. So for alpha equal to if I substitute here m is equal to 1, then for alpha equal to plus and minus pi, you will get the condition for first order minima. So this plus minus sign indicate that it is symmetrical with respect to principal maxima. So here for alpha is equal to pi and alpha is equal to minus pi, you will get the position of first order minima. So this is the first order, and I write simply m for minima. So here also there is a first order minima for alpha equal to minus pi. Similarly for alpha is equal to 2 pi and alpha is equal to minus 2 pi, you will get the position of second order minima. For alpha is equal to 3 pi, alpha is equal to minus 3 pi, you will get the position of third order minima, and so on. And here what do you observe, that the position of first order, this is position of first order secondary maxima, and the position of first order secondary maxima, it lies exactly the halfway between first order minima and second order minima. Position of this second order secondary maxima, position of this second order secondary maxima, position of second order secondary maxima, it lies exactly the halfway between second order minima and third order minima. And further we have seen what is the relative intensity for such secondary maximas. So for m is equal to 1, this relative intensity is 0.045. For m is equal to 2, it is 0.016, and for m is equal to 3, it is 0.008. And therefore here the relative intensity of secondary maxima, it decreases as the order of diffraction keeps on increasing. So hence as the order of diffraction increases, relative intensity of secondary maxima decreases in Fraunhofer diffraction due to single slit. So this is the resultant intensity pattern due to Fraunhofer diffraction in case of single slit.